so much for talking to ET Now. We're joined by Infosys Chairman R Seshasayee and the newly elevated co-chair Ravi Venkatesan. Thank you for joining us on ET Now. So I can't think of a more direct way to ask the opening question. What has board change done to placate Mr. Narayan Murthy?
First of all, I must say categorically that Murthy did not propose Ravi as the co-chair. Of course, all of us joined the board when Murthy was the chairman, and we are all known to each other. The reason why the board felt that we need a co-chairman is because I have been spending a great deal of time on a variety of subjects. And the intensity with which the board members have been engaged in the last few months has been very high for a variety of reasons. And so I've been suggesting to the board that it would be appropriate to increase the bandwidth of the leadership of the board in order to be able to spend more time with the management, with more time with the stakeholders. And so the board very appropriately and unanimously chose Ravi should be the co-chair. He has been a phenomenal colleague on the board and has been contributing significantly to resolving several issues. So that's how Ravi is there as a co-chair. It's not because we have to do anything to please one or the other group, and that is not a correct interpretation.
Right. Ravi, you know, a lot of people I know are attaching a lot of meanings to your own role. People say that perhaps you will play the role of a bridge between the board and the founders. Take us through what role you will be playing going forward as co-chair.
See, Chandra, I see all companies in the industry right now struggling to transform themselves to a new business model, right? And Infi is very much part of that, and Vishal's doing a pretty good job driving that shift. In addition, in Infosys, we've got another major shift happening concurrently, which is that from a promoter-led company to a more professional board and a professional CEO. And so we've got a fairly large set of challenges, and as Sesh said, the metaphor I use repeatedly is if you've got a plane flying through a storm, it's helpful to have a co-pilot in the cockpit. And so I see
there's too much of turbulence now.
There is a heck of a lot of turbulence and headwinds and crosswinds out there. And so I see my role as supporting Sesh and the board and working closely with Vishal on a whole set of issues. We've talked a lot amongst ourselves on, how we're going to partner. We decided that given that we've been colleagues for so long, that we won't have a watertight, division of labor, but rather that on some issues I'll lead, on other issues he'll lead and I'll support. And so, yeah, there's just a heck of a lot of work to be done.
Right. I just want to understand, will this sort of put an end to the flashpoints that we've seen in the last few weeks between the board and the founders? Any assurance, tacit or otherwise, that you've got from them? Because one of the key issues that Mr. Murthy kept pressing was, a change in the board composition, particularly the appointment of a co-chair. So, in a sense, does this signal the end of perhaps a flashpoint, an olive branch that the board has extended to the founders?
In the course of making this transformation, whether it's business or the professional management or the culture, there would be several decisions that the company will take, and there are bound to be different viewpoints, perspectives coming from different quarters. And as I've said repeatedly, we have a responsibility as a board to listen and act responsibly. So therefore, in every situation, including the recent expression of viewpoints on COO's Praveen's pay hike, you would have noticed that the company said and the board said that we value the feedback. This is probably we didn't do a good communication about what was precisely the manner in which this was done. So we value that feedback.
Is there a stance in, because your statements in both instances, the previous time in January as well as last week, is that we value feedback from all stakeholders,
Right.
and promoters are also part of that group.
Right.
But are you now sort of giving them some sort of special treatment, preferential treatment? Because this would be seen as a reaction to what they've been.
Chandra, I have said this several times. This is an institution which has been created by the genius of this promoter group, and nobody can take away that. In some sense, in a very moral sense, we're all trustees of this wonderful institution that has been created by the founders. But at the same time, we are also an independent board, and we have to act like an independent board. And we therefore have to listen to all stakeholders and act in our judgment to the best interest of all stakeholders.
Right.
So there could be differences of viewpoints. We don't have any issue with differences of viewpoints. We would have to listen to them, and what is appropriate, we'll act on that. But as I said, don't link every action, including the appointment of Ravi as co-chair, as being anything by way of a response or a reaction to some position or statement or comment made by the founders. I don't think it is correct to link every action of the board to something which comes out from the promoters. So that's not the intention of the promoters either. They are giving us feedback, and let's listen to those feedback.
Ravi, what message does your appointment send out to wider set of stakeholders in terms of the steps that Infosys will take going forward? Any specific action points you have in mind?
No, as I said, this is a fairly seamless sort of action. I've been on the board for 6 years, and I think it signals continuity and a need to double down on the agenda that the board has and Vishal have embarked on.
And does this signal more changes going forward? Will we see induction of more independent directors or people in an executive capacity who make the cut for the board?
So we have a slate of names, and we have
Internal and external?
Well, at the moment we have a slate of name external.
Okay.
We have looked at what are the skills that we need to bring to the table, and so we would be constantly be looking for filling up those gaps and skills that we have in the board, and refreshing the board periodically. That's part of our job.
So change is a constant now.
Yeah.
So
right. A final set of questions. There is some dissonance on this 2020, revenue target. I remember you were quoted a few months back saying, this is not an aspiration, this is a target. Today, I asked Vishal this question, and he said, it's a moonshot, it's an aspiration. How would you really define this target? And is there a need to sort of, recalibrate the numbers, because it clearly looks very unrealistic, is it?
So I think there are two parts to it. One is that is Vishal saying something about 2020 which is different or contradicting what I'm saying about 2020? I think this question needs to be answered, right? You would have noticed that in this resolution, the shareholder resolution for Vishal's compensation, there was a very definitive kind of a statement to say that the compensation and variable pay was linked to 2020 targets, right? And you would have noticed that in fact the variable pay has been linked to a trajectory that took us to the 2020 target. And you would have noticed that actually, because of the several factors which are completely outside the control of the management relating to industry, the actual achievement has been far short of what the trajectory would have been to take us to 2020 target. And again, it must be said to the credit of Vishal that he held himself accountable to take us to the 2020 target, and therefore he was the one who said that I will hold myself my compensation linked to the 2020 target, and he has acted upon that, right? And this is how you would find that his compensation is actually less than what he got last year, because as a wonderful leader, he wanted to lead from the front and say that I wanted to do this. Now, this is the intention of the board. This is what the shareholders have approved. So there's been absolutely no non-alignment of this issue. But 2020 target is not something from a business point of view, something which can be achieved without any kind of a lapse at all, because the dynamics of the marketplace keeps changing.
Sure.
There are several variables which are outside the control of this. So on the one hand, while this has been, despite all these uncertainties, while this has been baked into the compensation package on the one hand, the other is that this continues to be the guidepost from the point of a business movement.
Final question to you, Ravi. I remember Sesh gave up his role at Hinduja, so that he could focus on Infosys full time. Will you still continue to focus on Bank of Baroda and Infosys? How are you really going to divide
Well,
it?
my role in both of these institutions is non-executive, and that's another transformation which is only partially complete, and so I very much intend to continue at the bank as well, if the government wants.
Finally, is there concern that the presence of a chair and a co-chair could slow down decision making? How will you really ensure that doesn't happen, particularly in a difficult environment?
Chandra, I think when you find that there is turbulence, I mean, using the same analogy that Ravi used, you would find that instinctively or intuitively the pilot and the co-pilot would do the same things to make sure that it comes out of a turbulence. Now, they don't debate and argue and say that, I don't think that we should push this throttle, another person saying they will do it. No, because I think, sometimes challenges bring people together amazingly. And I can tell you that I'm very, very proud of the fact that we have an extremely cohesive board of extraordinary leaders who might have different viewpoints, but we converge very quickly on what needs to be done. And I don't think, therefore, that there has been any tough issue, and I don't believe that there will ever be a tough issue.
And we've worked together for 6 years on this board, and 20 years over time, so I think we sort of know each other.
Great. And both of you have a Chennai connection as well, or a Tamil connection.
Yeah. Well,
but he speaks awful Tamil.
But on that note, thank you both so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Chandra.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow, and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/ETNow.